And hello to you, and welcome to the Richard Nicholls podcast, the personal development podcast series that's here to help inspire, educate, and motivate you to be the best you can be. I'm psychotherapist Richard Nicholls, and this is episode 174. It's titled Suicide Prevention. And if you're ready, we'll start the show. Right then, a serious episode then. Seems a bit too much of a juxtaposition, doesn't it, to have my cheery theme tune and my happy-go-lucky voiceover voice and then, hi guys, today's all about the people who think about killing themselves. But on the 10th of October, it's World Mental Health Day, and the main topic for this year is preventing suicide. And I'd rather it was out in the open and talked about. And this is as good a place as any to put it out there. Now, I'm also video recording today's episode as well. I normally stick the audio podcast onto YouTube for the hard of hearing because YouTube transcribes it, or at least has a good go at transcribing my Midlands yokel accent, but it does all right. So with today's episode being a bit more serious, I thought I'd record it properly because suicide is an important topic. I guess I think I've probably avoided it all these years. I've probably mentioned suicide at some point in the series. I mean, I've been doing it for like 9 years. I don't think I've ever full on said, right then, let's not beat about the bush, folks, and be serious, because it's not nice to hear about. But suicide affects so many people. Now, I'll try and keep this episode as upbeat as I can, because that's who I am and it's what you expect from me. But being serious for a bit, someone takes their own life every 40 seconds. And this episode is just over 2 minutes in already. And sadly, that means that whilst I've been talking, 4, maybe even 5 people have killed themselves. And we're talking over 750,000 people each year. Twice as many people take their own life as take someone else's. Suicide is twice as common as murder. And yet, keeping yourself safe from what other people might do to you is talked about. It's talked about all the time. Well, for 800,000 people a year, it's not the other people they need protecting from, it's themselves. It is one of the biggest causes of death in people under 30. And by not talking about it, people can't gain what they need to help prevent it, because it is preventable. And whether you're a teacher, a paramedic, whether you work in an e-cig vape shop, no matter who you are, there might be something that you can do that saves someone's life, maybe even your own, actually. Now, the good news is that in the UK anyway, suicide rates as a whole are dropping a little bit. It's almost as low as it's ever been. There was a rise following the global recession, you see, and it is steadily falling again, but only if you clump all the statistics together. Because even though the total amount is falling, the age range of 15 to 19 is actually going up, despite the work that has been done. And there's been a lot of work. Suicide prevention has been high on the political agenda for a few years. It's one of the few things that all the political parties have actually agreed on. One thing I want to say before I forget, actually, and do please forgive yourself if you've used this phrase. I know I have at some point in the past, because it's just part of the vernacular, isn't it? But when someone kills themselves, they haven't committed suicide. You commit murder, you commit tax fraud, you commit a crime. The reason the phrase commit suicide even exists is because there was a time, before 1961 in the UK anyway, that it was, on paper, illegal to kill yourself. Because you've taken someone's life, that's illegal. So if you tried to kill yourself, you'd be fined. And rather than being sent to a therapist, you'd be sent to prison. So for generations, it was shameful, and I think there still is a stigma. Maybe through embarrassment, I don't know, but you can imagine a conversation in a pub, maybe about parents, if someone says, oh, my dad died when I was 18, and someone asks how. If they said, meningitis, There might be a big discussion about meningitis. It would open up a conversation all about the mysteries of meningitis. But sitting around a pub table and someone says, "So how did your dad die?" And they say, "Oh, he killed himself." It'd be like that scene in An American Werewolf in London where everything just stops and goes quiet. Even though suicide is nearly 3 times more common a cause of death than meningitis is. But people don't like talking about it. It makes them embarrassed because they maybe just don't know what to say. But if this fictitious person's dad had died of meningitis, what would we say? Would we just say, "Sad, what a shame, mate"? Yeah, probably. And talking about suicide isn't any different. It reminds me of the myth that talking about suicide encourages people to actually do it. No, it doesn't. That's nonsense. If you're genuinely worried about someone, then actually straight up asking them, "Have you had thoughts about killing yourself?" It isn't going to give them permission to do it. Instead, it gives them permission to talk about it, to open up to someone. Usually someone who's suicidal feels that it would be a burden to people by talking about it, so they hide how they feel. So by bringing it out into the open for them, can give them a huge sense of relief. That's probably the biggest myth about suicide, I'd say. That and the idea that it's selfish. It's not selfish to not want to live. If someone opens up to you about suicidal ideation, they don't need a guilt trip. They don't need reminding about what it would do to their family if they died. They probably already know. I think some people wrongly assume that in order for someone to kill themselves, they mustn't care about their loved ones. Of course they do. It's just that they genuinely believe that the world is a better place without them. And depression can do that. It's a crappy trick of the mind. And we need to be aware that it's a trick, that our brain is conspiring against us. It's as if there are no other options except suicide, but there are. It's just that emotional pain prevents us from seeing them. It distorts our thinking, so we can't see any solutions to our problems. That's why we need other people to be there, to help them to see alternatives, because often someone who is suicidal doesn't want to die. They just don't want to live. And I know it sounds like the same thing, but it really isn't. So, how does all this start? Because if we can nip this in the bud as soon as is possible, we are going to save lives. No doubt. We will save lives. Talking about suicidal ideation today and how it can be treated will prevent someone falling down so far that it makes them take their own life. Now, I don't know who it's going to be, but one of you out there is probably going to help save someone's life. Maybe your own, maybe someone else's. Now, suicidal ideation is different from simply thinking, "I could kill myself right now." Most people at some point in their life will have had that thought. They will think, "You know what? I could just end this and all my problems would go away." If it's an occasional thought that pops in, that's probably not that big an issue. Challenging it, do that by all means, but don't worry about it too much. Just monitor it, because before it becomes what we call active suicidal ideation, which is making plans, deciding how to do it, there's passive suicidal ideation, which is when you wish you were dead. When you regularly ask yourself, what if I was never born? What if I just ceased to exist? What if this bus crashed and I died? Wouldn't that be great? Passive suicidal ideation can be there for years and not become active, maybe even never become active. But it's a sign that someone needs help, needs therapy, maybe needs medication. Sometimes passive suicidal ideation turns into dangerous behaviour. That's something to look out for, as if tempting the universe to make them die so that they don't have to formally do it themselves. Things like drug taking, way too much alcohol, driving under the influence, speeding, running red lights, not wearing seatbelts, that sort of thing. If someone starts acting this way, they might well need to open up about their mental health to someone. But if they start giving away their possessions, and stop making plans for the future. If they're planning their funeral and writing a will, even though they're only 30, they probably need immediate help right now. And that starts with just listening to them, letting them talk about how they're feeling, no matter how crappy they are. Let them get it out. Talking about how bad they feel doesn't make them feel worse. Sometimes people think that it does because before they spoke about it, they weren't acknowledging how they really felt. And so getting it out there means they can't hide it any longer. Yeah, that might upset some people, and on the surface it seems as if they're taking a step backwards, but they're not. They're on that first step to getting well again, so listen to them. Put your phone away so that they have your full attention and listen. Don't interrupt. Don't feel under pressure to offer advice either. Don't talk about yourself unless it's genuinely in their interest, and just listen to them. Make eye contact and learn about them. Sometimes that's all they need to create this domino effect that makes them say, I need to see someone, don't I? And be patient. One thing that surprises students when they're training to be counsellors is the value in silence. We don't have to fill in the gaps because sometimes it takes a while to put into words how we're feeling, to pluck up the courage to say what's going on, even to a therapist who is paid to be non-judgmental and trusting, let alone a mate who someone doesn't want to burden with their problems. Be honoured and privileged that they're opening up to you, that they feel safe enough with you to be so honest about how they're feeling. You can go around the house for 2 hours for tea and biscuits and hardly say anything yourself other than, go on, or tell me more. So try and avoid closed questions, as they're called. Closed questions have answers that are pretty much just yes or no, whereas open-ended questions get them talking. How are you feeling today? Is open. Are you feeling okay today? Is closed. Now, when you do the talking yourself, see if you can feed back to them what they've said, rather than interpreting what they've said, because that's putting your views on it. Make sure that you have heard what they wanted you to hear by repeating it back to them a bit. It's called reflective listening. And although it's parodied in every comedy sketch about counselling, it is still imperative. You've probably seen it on the telly. The client says, I've been feeling quite lost lately. And the therapist says, it's as if lately you've been feeling quite lost. That's just lazy, and it's not going to build a trusting relationship. But feeding back and summarising the things that they've said to you has two effects. Firstly, it makes sure you've understood them correctly and stops you from making assumptions. But more importantly, it proves to them that you're listening, that their voice is being heard. If you Google reflective listening, you can learn more about it, because it would be an episode all to itself if I went into details, and I'm already aware that we're nearly 14 minutes into this episode. It looks like being a long one already, and rightly so. This is a serious topic, and I'm still only going to scratch the surface of it, but I want to get the conversations going. But remember this, it's not your job to fix them. You can help them fix themselves, but there's only so much that you can do. Just respect them. Listen to them. And hard as it is to see someone you care for that's hurting, you must validate how they feel. They need to tell you how bad they're feeling. And if you invalidate that, if you disagree with them, and you'll probably want to disagree, you'll probably want to say, you have no reason to want to die. You're great. Everyone likes you. That's not how they feel. So that's not that helpful. If you want to help because they have no energy or inclination to do anything because it's duvet or death, then help them find a therapist. Maybe take them to their appointments if you really want to help. Maybe help pay for the sessions if that's an issue. But ask them to check in with you on a daily basis. If they don't, then message them to say you're thinking about them and to let you know how they're getting on. that they're not forgetting to eat, things like that, or whatever is appropriate, you might need to prove their depression wrong for them. So often people don't tell their friends how badly they're doing because they think it'll push their friends away. Prove them wrong by being there for them. You know, it might be hard work, so make sure you look after yourself too, by the way. I often see people in therapy who are only there because they need a safe place to offload how scared they are for their best friend. See your own therapist if you have to. You don't need to be suicidal to need the support. And if you are, if this is actually you that is going through all this, what possible advice can me or anyone offer to you that saves your life? Well, first off, quite simply, wait. Wait. Don't take any action yet. If you're so serious about this that you are moments away from taking your own life, do it tomorrow instead. It's probably impossible to tell yourself that you're going to rule it out completely because it's there. So acknowledge how bad you feel and don't lie to yourself, but put it off for a bit. Tell yourself you'll make a cup of tea first, if you have to. And procrastinate, like you would with a school essay, if you're anything like me. Tell yourself you'll finish watching that TV show you like first. That you'll die at some point, just not today. And if you've been there before, been so low that you felt you had to die right there and then, yet you didn't, and it lifted, even if it lifted just a bit, remember that. If you've thought about killing yourself before and you didn't, recognise that since that point, there would have been times that you were glad that you didn't. No matter how small, there would have been some good things that have happened since the last time you thought this way. Think about those things. Because your emotions are not fixed. Your emotional state is in a constant flux. How you feel right now might not be the same as how you felt yesterday, or how you'll feel tomorrow or next week. Do something that would make it as close to impossible to kill yourself right now. So get out of the house maybe. Don't be alone. Go somewhere where there are people around you. Go for a walk. Sit in a coffee shop. Go to the library. Anything to feel in some way connected to the outside world. But most importantly, reach out to someone. Call a friend. Call a hotline. Call the Samaritans or Mind or Sane UK. I'll put their numbers in the show notes. Talk to someone and tell them that you need some help making yourself safe. So you might need to make your home safer. You might need a friend to look after your medication for you if you have it, and be honest and say, you need to give me these back one pill at a time and watch me take it so that I don't hoard it because I don't trust myself. Honesty is so important. If you've made that commitment in the moment that, okay, I'm not doing it today, I promise myself that it will be tomorrow, not today, then use those 24 hours to explain to people what's really going on, and explain it. Don't be vague. Don't just say, I can't go on like this. That's only half the truth. If the truth is you are making plans to die, then tell them that. Shocking as it is, it's the truth. And your friends deserve to know the truth about how you feel, because suicide is permanent. There's no going back from it, is there? But it's a permanent solution to what might only be a temporary problem. Remember that. I'll say that again, actually. Suicide is a permanent solution to what might be only a temporary problem. Crikey, we're nearly up to 20 minutes. So before I go, I'll mention 3 UK phone lines that are manned by therapists, experienced and trained in how to handle this, so you're never going to burden them with the truth. So there's the Samaritans on 116123. There's someone there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's 116123. And then there's Sane UK. They are on 0300 304 7000. Sane UK, I've got people in the evenings. They're 4:30 till 10:30 at night, 7 days a week. So look, I know this is a serious topic. And for a podcast series all about self-help and positive thinking, it might seem like a bit of a downer today, but I have a lot of listeners, and it's a shame to waste the opportunity to talk about this. So I'm going to leave it here because it's a long one today, and this is such a big topic and I could go on about it for hours, and there are already enough people doing that. I'm here hopefully just to get the conversations going, which I really hope it does, folks. So I'll love you and leave you for now. If you're a patron of the podcast, then you'll hear me again on Monday on the patron-only feed. If you haven't listened to this week's, then that's all about avoidance and facing your fears. And if you're new to the podcast and you'd like to hear some extra episodes, then why not become a patron through patreon.com. You'll get a new episode every week, as well as every month as well. So look after yourself and anyone who needs you, and I'll speak to you next time. Okay? Take care, folks. Bye.